Hello, my name is Joe, and welcome to my channel, Joe's Book and Movie Corner. Today, I want to talk about the first 4 chapters in a book that I am currently reading, and that is Dracula by Bram Stoker. This entire year, I've been wanting to read this book in October, really just to, put it around Halloween. It's an appropriate time of year to read Dracula. I've never read it before. This is my first time reading it. And there's a couple other things that just kind of made it the right time of year. One, Victober is going on, where you read works of Victorian literature in October, so that qualifies. And also, maybe more importantly, Randy Ray, the literate Texan, with his Lone Star Book Club, he has selected for the month of October Dracula. So I'm participating in that, and I'm having a lot of fun. I will go ahead and put a link to a video that Randy posted about the first 4 chapters. So you can consider this a response video to his video. So I encourage you to check that out as well. So I want to talk about the first 4 chapters. Those are the well, really we were supposed to read the first 5 chapters, but I'm just going to talk about the first 4. You can consider this video full of spoilers if you've never read Dracula. So there's your warning. And I'm going to follow Randy's lead. He talked about unsettling moments and creepy moments in the first 4 chapters. So I'm going to mention some things that really stood out to me. And also, in the second half of the video, I want to pivot towards a topic that I brought up in some of my Shorty September videos. And I want to talk about narrative style and narrative structure in Victorian literature. And I want to talk about the fact that this is an epistolary novel, a series of letters and journal entries. And so far, I just want to say I'm really enjoying this. If you want to jump ahead right to the end for whatever reason, when hear me talk about narrative structure, just head down in the description. And and you can see a timestamp. So what were some creepy moments and moments that stood out to me? The first one, let me say, the whole first 4 chapters are just overall very atmospheric, very creepy, very unsettling. I think you have to, as we were talking about in our discussion group, it would be a good idea to put yourself in the shoes of a reader in the 1890s reading this for the first time. And you have to try to imagine that you don't know you don't know the story of Dracula. I mean, even if you've never read this, which I haven't, you've probably seen a Dracula movie. I've seen 4 or 5 Dracula movies. And even if you haven't seen a Dracula movie, you know about Dracula just from cultural osmosis. So you have to kind of, I think as you're reading this, just put aside your knowledge of Dracula and imagine yourself reading this for the first time. It's very creepy. It's very unsettling. We're following Jonathan Harker as he's writing letters and writing in his journal as his journey to Dracula's castle. And the first scene that really stood out to me as creepy is when he meets Dracula's carriage driver. It's the last carriage he's going to take that's going to take him to the castle. And Harker later figures out that that's probably Dracula himself in disguise. It's very creepy. The driver, he expresses knowledge of conversations that's going on in the other carriage. There's a very surreal scene where the driver appears to be going in circles. Harker thinks, am I dreaming this? He's not even, so he enters this almost dreamlike state, and the driver is going out into the woods with these blue flames. It's very surreal and creepy. And just when he gets to the castle, it's this decrepit, uninviting castle with cliffs on 3 sides. Dracula, Harker's, he's creeped out. Dracula, at first, though, when he meets him, he appears kind of pleasant. And, you're thinking as the reader, oh, actually, he's not so bad, despite the surroundings. And he at one point says to Harker, consider this castle yours. Hey, there's a few locked doors around, so please don't go in any locked doors. Oh, that makes sense. And it turns out that, all the doors are locked, and Harker is very quickly finds himself prisoner in this castle. So you're going to see this in these first 4 chapters time and again. Dracula loves messing with people, and he likes messing with Harker. And he likes, playing mind games and needling them. And that's going to come up again in some other creepy moments. There's one moment in particular that really shocked me. But before we get to that, I want to describe a scene and then read a passage from one of the chapters. There's a scene where Harker, he starts exploring the castle, and he's comes to the conclusion that, or he asks the question, are we alone in this castle? Like, surely, you'd expect servants in a castle, and someone is setting out the food for him, but he doesn't see anyone else. Eventually, he does meet some other people, and he meets, in the novel, I think they're called the Weird Sisters. Sometimes I believe they're referred to as Dracula's wives. And they're these voluptuous women. They basically seduce Harker. And there's a scene where, they're going to, we know about vampires. They're going to, bite him on the neck. And Harker is turned on by this. I mean, the novel is not shy about saying that he is aroused by these women. And the act of being bitten on the neck is essentially a sexual act for these vampires. And I want to read a passage. So Dracula comes in, and this is the first thing that caught me off guard, and then leading up to a really big, shocking moment. Dracula bursts into the room. His eyes are bloodshot. He's very vicious, and he's angry at the three women. And he basically says, he's not for you. And there's something surprising here that I want to read you. So Dracula has just burst into the room. They're biting Harker on the neck. It's highly sexualized. And Dracula says, "How dare you touch him, any of you? How dare you cast your eyes on him when I had forbidden it? Back, I tell you, this man belongs to me. Beware how you meddle with him, or you'll have to deal with me." The fair girl, with a laugh of ribald coquetry, I had to look that up, turned to answer him. "You yourself never loved. You never love." On this the other women joined, and such a mirthless, hard, soulless laughter rang through the room that it almost made me faint to hear. It seemed like the pleasure of fiends. The Count turned, after looking at my face attentively, and said in a soft whisper, "Yes, I too can love. You yourselves can tell it from the past. Is it not so? Well, now I promise you that when I am done with him, you shall kiss him at your will. Now go, go. I must awaken him, for there is work to be done." So, I was not surprised at, these women being very sexualized, and the biting on the neck is essentially being a sexual act. And I wasn't surprised that Harker was turned on. I wasn't surprised at Dracula's anger when he sees them with Harker. What I was surprised at was how they mock Dracula. A ribald coquetry. I looked that up, and I think it means something to the effect of kind of a mocking of a sexual nature. They're mocking Dracula, and they laugh in his face. That surprised me. I mean, when I think of vampires, and I think we do get some of this, I think our cultural image of vampires is that there's a sadness, there's a melancholy to them. They have this affliction. It's like a disease and a curse. And I think we get that with Dracula. There is a sadness to him. I'm going to be curious to know as I continue on if that's accurate, if we get this sense of sadness and melancholy from him. I was expecting, when Dracula bursts into the room, I was expecting his wives to kind of shy away. Like, this is the master. We're subservient to him. I was not expecting them to be mocking him and laughing in Dracula's face. So that shocked me. And then we get to the big moment immediately after this when Dracula, they say, "Hey, is there nothing?" They ask him, "Is there nothing for us?" And he puts down a bag on the floor. And in the bag, Harker believes he hears the cries of a child. It's a baby in the bag for them for the wives to consume. That shocked me. I was not expecting that. And this is a moment that, I've seen a number of Dracula adaptations. I don't think I've seen that in a film adaptation. And if I were going to make my own adaptation, I would make sure to put that in there. That is really disturbing. And that kind of caught me off guard. There's a follow-up scene later. Once again, caught me off guard. the mother of the child later comes to the castle and is begging. She says, "Monster, give me back my child." And Dracula sicks wolves on her. That was shocking as well. There's another scene where towards the end of chapter 4, when we get to the end of these initial chapters, where Harker finds Dracula he's like laying down in his coffin, and he now appears younger, and he's engorged himself with blood, and he seems bloated and gross looking. And that's something that if I were to make my own adaptation, I would put that in there and I would make it look really, really gross. It was a very, very, very disgusting image to me. And so now I want to start to pivot towards the second half of what I want to talk about, the style of the narrative. As I mentioned, it's an epistolary, so it's a series of letters and journal entries. And in these first 4 chapters, we're just getting Jonathan Harker's point of view. And something that Bram Stoker does at the end, I mean, he's doing what you'd expect. It's all written in the past tense. And each entry is Harker recounting events that have happened. Now, it's important to note that Harker, if he's writing a letter or a journal entry on May the 3rd, he doesn't know what's going to happen on May the 4th. So we are kind of in the moment with him. But we also still get a recounting style of narrative. He's writing about events that have happened to him. At the end of chapter 4, as Harker, he's hiding in the castle, there's other people, they're trying to find him, he switches to the present tense. It's as if he's writing the journal as he's running, or as he's hiding in the castle, and he writes, there's footsteps all around me. He switches to the present tense. And the pace at the very end of that chapter immediately ramps up, and there's a sense of urgency, and there's a sense of just immediate tension. So it really surprised me that Bram Stoker is he completely changed to the present tense to just add this sense of tension and urgency. So that surprised me. In September, I've read for the Shorty September BookTube event, I read 2 novels. The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, a work of science fiction. And as an hors d'oeuvre, an appetizer to Dracula, I read Carmilla by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu, a vampire novella. And both of those novels, I in my videos, I called it kind of a quasi-epistolary style. Maybe that's not a good word. As I'm reading this, maybe that's not a good description of it. But what I mean is it's this recounting style of narrative. With the Time Machine, you have essentially the core of the story is the time traveler recounting his tale. As he's telling his story, he reminds his audience and the reader that he knows how the story ends. You're repeatedly reminded that. He kind of thinks about, he goes to the far future. He's living with this society, and he thinks, well, how did this society, come to this state? And he keeps reminding you, hey, this is what I was thinking. This is probably what happened. And boy, was I wrong. So we're repeatedly reminded that he knows how the story is going to end. In Carmilla, it's not a literal character recounting a story, but you kind of get that sense in the narrative. The main character is telling you, the reader, her tale. And you do get a sense that, she knows how the story is going to end. We don't feel like we're quite in the moment with these characters. And it reminds me, and I think you could easily take those 2 novels and rewrite them as epistolaries. But as I'm seeing with Dracula, an actual epistolary, you're able, even though you'd think, you're writing letters, we're not in the moment with these characters. And that is true. You do feel more in the moment compared to, in my opinion, compared to something like The Time Machine and Carmilla. And I'm seeing this recounting narrative style. I'm seeing it into the pulp era with kind of weird tales type stories. Very often they're in this recounting style, narrative style. So I'm really curious to know, when we start switching characters' point of views, how Stoker is, or I'm imagining, clearly I'm seeing that he's a very good writer. I want to see if the narrative voice changes, if yes, this really does feel like a different character. if he does anything else with maybe changing tension to kind of ramp, or changing to the present tense to ramp up tension, if he's going to do any kind of narrative tricks like that. So yeah, I'm really excited to continue this. I think this is the second epistolary I've ever read. The first one was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and that did really interesting things too with its narrative. And the other thing, just going back to something that creeped me out, that sense of melancholy from Dracula. I mean, we have that cultural sense of vampires being this kind of these sad figures. I'm not seeing that with his wives. I sort of saw it with Dracula himself. I want to know if that's going to continue in the novel. I suspect that it will. But that's all for now. I'm really enjoying this. I am slowly reading it, so I'm reading other things as I'm reading that. Usually I like to stick with one book at a time. So very rarely do I read multiple books at once. By the way, I'm reading Nonstop by Brian Aldiss right now too. But yeah, I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying the group discussion on Voxer. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, I'm planning on making at least a few more of these videos as I go through Dracula. But that's all for now. Thank you.